Hey guys, Liquidfire here. Thanks for joining me again tonight. So we are back in Way of the Hunter, but we're not actually playing the game. We're going to look through the new Hunter Log number 9 that came out today. Well, I say today, it wasn't today because it takes me forever to get stuff recorded and uploaded and all that. But it's the new Hunter Log that came out. So this one's kind of small in terms of information that we really want to get into. So we're going to do it a little bit differently. We are going to bring up their webpage and just kind of scroll through the page together and hit the highlights as we go. So it starts out that Way of the Hunter has grown with new updates. They've welcomed Integrix and Bergara. They reached the milestone of 1 million copies sold, and they wanted to look back together and then take a glimpse of what's ahead. And that's the part we're actually interested in, the part that's coming up. So we're going to kind of skim through some of the other parts as we go along. There are some really nice photos in here, so it's worth coming in to take a look at some things to kind of see what people have shared. So some really cool shots. So they start out that it's been a long time since the last Hunter log in December. But first of all, they wanted to thank everyone for their patience in sticking through the months of updates, fixes, and new gear. This log is a chance to look back at what we've built together in 2025 so far. So let's take a moment. All right, I'm not going through all that, but they're going to recap some stuff. So the year kicked off with update 126.7, and this was the update of the year so far. This was huge. This had the hunting map UI in it, and that effectively changed how you managed your herds. Yes, it made it clear, but the reality is not only did it make it more clear, it allowed us to actually see what we needed to do in many situations. Of everything that they've done throughout the entire year so far, the herd management hunting map UI update, that's been the game changer out of everything. Nothing even comes close, in my opinion. So they did that. They made improvements to multiplayer, which was nice. They added FSR2 and some DLSS presets. Nice things. We got to see some new albinos. They added in the sandbar, the Gemsbok, and the Springbok, which I still have not had a Springbok albino. Really good picture here by Nexus Flaco, or Flacco, I guess. But it's a good shot there. So yeah, that's nice. Seeing the rares, always a good thing to see. In update 127, that was the night vision, so that was cool. To me, it was nice, but whatever. Um, it was handy, but it was cool. Then they skip over to some of the videos that people have made. So Sightless put together a video on the Night Vision DLC that they wanted to highlight, so that was cool. And then they talk about new partners, and these are kind of cool. So we're going to spend just a moment kind of walking through this. This story is actually really cool. So a passionate Way of the Hunter fan from Integrix reached out to them to bring their brand into the game. So Integrix actually reached out to Way of the Hunter, which is pretty cool. So talking to Way of the Hunter players who also work with real life equipment made this collaboration even more special, which I'm sure it would. And we were proud to introduce the Integrix rifle scope. And then shortly after the 3rd anniversary, they announced the addition of Bergara, and that's the B14 Wilderness HMR. And that came in as a free update, and they said it became a community favorite. It did. It's a great little rifle. In terms of free rifles to give out for a 3rd year anniversary, they knocked this one out of the park. It is really, really good. Yes, it is not as good as the SM12. Not trying to pretend that it is, but it's damn close. It really is. It's a good rifle, and to get that one for free was really nice. So they get into a little bit of the behind the scenes. So I'm going to kind of go through this a little more word for word. As a bit of behind the scenes insight, our team had the opportunity to test the B14 Wilderness HMR in real life. We also captured its sounds and brought them directly into the game. So what you hear is as authentic as it gets. We'll be sharing a video of the experience with you soon. Right now, we'd like to give a special thanks to, I don't want to butcher these names, so I will just skip over them. But they want to give special thanks to the folks from Bergara for helping them record the HMR Wilderness out in the wild. So that's really cool. And I think that it showed in this gun. It looks good. It sounds good. You know, for a free gun, it's pretty freaking awesome. So that was cool. And then they mentioned how much those collaborations mean to them, and they're thankful to both Integrix and Bergara. And I will extend that thanks myself to Integrix and Bergara. I think it's really cool to see new manufacturers kind of joining in with the game. I personally don't care so much about in real life guns in game. They're nice, it's cool and all, but I don't care if we have real or if we have fake. But if we can have real, that's always cool. And when it's real and from a smaller company or a more unknown company, like for me, I'd never heard of Bergara, to have that kind of introduced to you, that's pretty cool. And then August closed with the release of the Hunter's Advantage Pack. That came with the 3 new rifles and the e-collar. So you got the Mordecai Double Jab 416. That thing is a beast. Prairie Hunter the Jack, the Misunderstood 44. We're not going to get into why it's misunderstood. Watch the other videos if you don't understand. It's actually a really good rifle if you use it for what it's intended for and you ignore what the encyclopedia says because it's wrong. And of course, I don't think they did I skip over it or did they not mention the 224? I think they skipped the 224. But of course, they added in the 224 Valkyrie, which is a really handy and versatile, to be honest, rifle. I wish it had been a little more accurate, but that's all right. And of course, the e-collar, which puts 47 calls into one. So definitely a cool thing there. And they say that brings us to the present. Of course, they would like to thank us for all the feedback on the bugs and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's cool. And then we need to start looking here. I'm going to go ahead and highlight this. So the next update. So the next update we get, which should be, we'll say trademark soon, but relatively soon. The next update will include improvements to the e-collar. So I'm assuming it's actually going to move around and hopefully doesn't make you wait forever to actually be able to use other tools. Sound effects adjustments, not sure what, hopefully around the rifles. I think somebody at some point mentioned something that they were working on. I guess it was Miriam. I can't remember, so I apologize. I just don't remember what it was. But there's some sound effects adjustments they're going to be making. And a new resident that will soon join the herds in Tikamoon. So it's a massive, majestic, and ready to roam the grasslands animal. This has sparked debate, outrage, discontent, happiness, and a myriad of other emotions in the Discord. I would like to be on the bus that says, oh, that sounds like it's an elephant. I don't think it is. But that would be cool if it was, and perhaps I'm wrong. But I just can't see it. An elephant is a very tricky model to get to look right. So it's huge, okay? That's not the problem. Making something really big is not hard to do. That's easy. Making something really big that moves appropriately becomes a little tougher because everything is magnified. If, say, a badger has a small issue with its gait, you don't notice it. It's down in the grass. You can't see it. If an elephant has problems with their legs working right, you can definitely see that. It's going to be out in your face. So when you're talking about like an elephant, it has to be spot on from head to toe, or trunk to tail in this case, because it's so big, everything's going to stand out. And if you think about the moving parts on an elephant. You've got the trunk. That's a very fluid piece of an elephant. You get that wrong, the elephant doesn't look right. If it doesn't sway right, there's not good flow to it, it's not going to look right. You've got massive ears that need to be able to flap. They need to be able to move and twist and do all those things that you see elephants do whenever they get agitated or aggressive. They flare out. So there's a lot of really big moving parts just in the head alone that would take a ton of effort to make look right. And then you've got the entire body, you've got the gait, you've got the tail. I mean, there's a lot to do, and elephants are not like a dog, for example. They really stand out in the way they move, the way they act, and it's something that's so big that you can't kind of fake it. You need to get it really, really, really right. And to me, that does not fit with what we've been getting in the patches. Now, if I step back a little bit and think about what we have been getting and what I think we're likely to see, a lot of the animals that we've gotten, the term retread is used a lot. Okay. So you've had stuff like the golden jackal, and he's cool, but how different is he from the wolves? How different is the Arctic fox from the fox? How different is the mule deer from the whitetail? I mean, yeah, they need to be there, but they're very similar. And when we start looking at the different animals that we've gotten, to me, it seems much more likely that we're going to see something that's very similar to what we've had in the past and very common in Tikkamoon. I don't think that it's going to be one of the big five. I, I definitely don't think it would be an elephant. Um, and I'm going to kind of pause there. And when we get to the end, I'll kind of try to wrap back to why it really, to me, makes sense that it's going to be something simple. So, the next update is going to have a new animal in Tikkamoon. Then they get into some community highlights. So we had the spring screenshot contest, and there were some really cool shots in there. If you haven't looked through those, it's definitely worth going in and taking a look. There's some good shots. Um, they there's just a ton of good shots. And not much else to say about that. They get into some of the content creators sharing some videos that they've worked on. So you've got one here. This is by Hunt. So what to shoot and what not to shoot guide. Definitely handy. I haven't watched it, so I can't say if they're good or bad, but it's definitely there. You've got something by Fei Yin. So Ammo Made Simple by Fei Yin. Again, I haven't watched it, so I can't say anything about how it is. And then you've got the best one of all, of course. I've somehow managed to get on here. Um, it's the Efficient Calling Deep Dive, which oddly enough, that's not even my work. It's something I learned. So it was something that I learned actually from Discord, and went out, worked with it, and experienced it, and was like, you know what, this really does work much, much, much better. So we put together a video on how to do it and explain how it works. So yeah, whatever. I'm in there. It's cool. But yeah, Fei Yin and Hunt have some videos they highlighted. And then what else we got? They talk about joining the Discord. They talked about the official soundtrack for Way of the Hunter. So they made it easier to enjoy all the Way of the Hunter soundtrack sounds, blah, blah, blah. So it's on Spotify and iTunes. And there really is some good music. Don't discount the quality of the music. There is some good music in there. It's pretty cool. Then they talk about making the 1,000,000 copies. So having 1,000,000 copies sold it's pretty huge. That's awesome. And they talked about the 5th anniversary for the team itself. So that was cool. And you can certainly click through there and look at all the different images that they put together. But here's the part that we're actually really interested in, and we're going to scroll to right here. So, tracks ahead. This is the part that really gets into what this update or what this hunter log, what the guts of it really is about. So it's cool to highlight the other stuff, but this is the big news. So let's circle back to the last point. This year, as many of you noticed, we haven't shared a detailed roadmap. Yeah, they've been catching heat for a year, well, longer, but they've been catching heat over not having a roadmap. So the truth is, plans in game development tend to shift constantly, sometimes faster than we'd like. I can believe that. We've shared news when things were certain and held back when they weren't to avoid giving you promises they couldn't keep. 100% for that. I agree with it. I'm glad they do that. And they appreciate the support and passion we show for Way of the Hunter. There is nothing if not passion in the Discord. I will guarantee that. There are a lot of passionate people, a lot of opinionated people, and a lot of people who really, really, really support the game, but are also critical. I fall into that. I love the game. I think it's the best hunting game on the market right now, hands down. It's not the one with the most users, but it's the one to me that is the actual best hunting game. I'm also super critical of it. And I think that's part of it when you have an attachment to a game that you've been with, we've been with this for 3 years now. From day one, pre-order, honestly, one of the few games I've actually ever pre-ordered. I pre-ordered it and I've been, working with the game from day one, working with the different CMs, Michael and Miriam, and I've had tons and tons and tons of conversations on the Discord. It is a game that I am fairly passionate about as a gamer, um, and I think that I'm certainly not the only one. But we're looking forward to sharing more with the community as we continue to solidify our plans and prepare the road ahead for Way of the Hunter. We know you're eager for news, so we can at least tell you that while this is key here, part of the team remains fully focused on future updates. Others have already been laying the groundwork for the next game at Nine Rocks Games. It's no shocker. Anybody who's watched the dev cycles, watched the content, the amount of content, especially coming out over the last year, it's been more than obvious that the whole team hasn't been working on it. The team's expanded. It's a bigger team now. Many moons ago, it was 55 people. I think somebody said they were at 50 for a while. Now they're at 62. So the team's growing, and the content is not growing. So it was obvious, and that's fine. They're a game development company. They're going to develop games. They're not going to spend all of their time on one game if there's better opportunities. So they are working on a new game. They're not ready to just spill the beans just yet, but rest assured there are good things in store, and we'll share them when they're able. So this is where the speculation really begins. What is the new game? Is it Way of the Hunter 2? Is it a different hunting game? Is it something in a completely different genre? So if we think about the team overall, so this team came from the Bohemia studio. They had people from Cabela's games on it. They had people from DayZ on it, and other games, of course, as well. So when we start thinking about what they're likely to be working on, there's a few hints kind of along the way just on their makeup. So back in 2020, one of the first projects that was announced with THQ Nordic and Nine Rocks Games was that there was going to be a shooter/survival game made, and then Nine Rocks came out with Way of the Hunter. So that kind of sets a seed. We know that Way of the Hunter, it's got 1 million copies sold. That's great. But if we take a look in Steam and look at the player base, the numbers are not that great. They're just not. The Hunter Classic continually has more people playing it, and those two games are really more in the same niche in the genre. They're the more realistic, the more sim side of things. Way of the Hunter is definitely my favorite game, hands down. But if we look at the other side in the hunting region of games, you've got Call of the Wild, and their numbers are through the roof. It's a totally different style. It's not the same thing. You can't really compare the player base for Call of the Wild to the player base for Way of the Hunter and Classic. They're just two different groups. Yes, there is some overlap, obviously, but by and large, they're different. The more realistic, slower play that we have in Classic and in Way of the Hunter is a more niche group out of those who play hunting games. So it's not surprising to me that the numbers are relatively low for this type of game. From a business perspective, there is a lot more opportunity if you're looking at something like a survival game. And with the roots in DayZ, they certainly have a pretty solid inside knowledge on how some of the pretty decent survivor games work. Right now, DayZ still has like 35,000 active players daily. That's 35,000 daily. We've never had 35,000 in Steam at once with Way of the Hunter. Now, that's not a dig at Way of the Hunter. It's an example of the size of the player base. It's a much larger player base in the survival genre than there is in the sim hunting genre. And from a business perspective, to me, it only makes sense to look at something that's going to create the most income. And if you think about what they've done with Way of the Hunter, they've done a lot of good things. There really has been a lot of good done. But a lot of this would also be something that you could really translate and use in a survival game. I think it would be kind of cool if they did some sort of crossover with Way of the Hunter and the survival genre. That would be kind of neat, but that's like really, really stretching things out there. But to me, I don't, in my kind of gut, just don't feel like we're likely to see a second hunting game. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they go all in hunting, and it's Way of the Hunter 2 and UE5 and all that good stuff. Or maybe it's a completely remixed hunting game, something totally different. Who knows? To me, I'm still leaning on something in the survival genre, but we don't know, and we won't know for a while. It takes years to put together a good game. They could put together a hunting game faster than some other types of games because they've got so much already under the belt with Way of the Hunter. But I still think we're a ways out from seeing what they do. So yeah, I don't think we're going to see a new hunting game. But they continue on. What we can say is this, and here is some big news. Way of the Hunter still has plenty ahead, and in the foreseeable future, you can look forward to multiple new animals, so that's big, additional rifles, that's also nice, ongoing fixes and improvements, good to hear. To me, the improvements, the QOL stuff, if they start getting into game mechanics and improving stuff like that, to me, that's a bigger thing than new rifles and stuff like that. But you have to keep the perspective that it's now a small, well, it has been, but it's officially a small group of people working on it. So the changes are going to be reflective of the size. We're not going to see massive changes anymore. It's just not going to happen. And that's okay. It is what it is. But we're going to see new animals, additional rifles, ongoing fixes and improvements. And here's the big one, a small free USA map that will introduce one of the new animals. So a free map. That's pretty awesome. Now, the interesting thing on this is a small free map. So it's a US based map. It's going to be small. They've never really said small for any of the maps before, even if they were only 64 kilometers squared. So that's our small map today, 64. You've got some that are 144 kilometers squared, Nez Perce and Transylvania. Tikamoon's 100, and then we've got 64 square kilometers and some other ones. So those small maps have been 64 kilometers. This being called out as a small map makes me think that it's actually going to be even smaller than anything we've got today. How small is that? Who knows? Um, the speculation on what that map would be has been just off the charts. Um, Basically, there's been everything from, oh gosh, southern, northern, central, eastern, I just everywhere in the U.S., different concepts and ideas and lists and lists and lists of animals that could be in it, even though it said there was going to be one animal. So there's been tons of speculation about what it could be. To me, I think this may actually be something that I personally suggested a long time ago. I think that this, and we're purely guessing, I have no inside knowledge, so I think they're going to take Nez Perce and coat it with snow. I think we're going to see a small subsection out of Nez Perce. I think they cover it with snow so that everybody gets the snow that people have been begging for. And it's not a lot of overhead since it's an existing map. They can just take a section of it, change out the foliage, cover the ground with snow, and then add in maybe a bobcat. So bobcat is not much more than a reskinned lynx. Um, we we know that it's easy to make a lynx look like a bobcat. We've seen it. So to me, that would fit. Reskinning one of the dogs to look like a coyote would be an easy fit, easy work. A good retread that people have been begging for some reason. So either of those could fit pretty easily. Now, this is, of course, pure speculation. No inside knowledge, no anything to base it on. But when we think about it being a smaller team, we know that they're working on the other updates. They're working on new animals. They're working on rifles, fixes, and things like that. With the team being smaller, how much time was spent building out a new map? Maybe. And maybe people worked on the map before they moved on to something else, or they didn't need to be working on a map on the new game, so they had people working on maps here. Who knows? But to me, I think that with it being free, it's probably not something that's brand new. And it's certainly being small to me is telling me that it's smaller than even the 64 square kilometers that we've seen for the quote unquote small maps in the past. That's still huge. But I think we're looking. I think we're looking at a really cool idea. I think we get to see snow. I think it's probably going to be a subsection out of Nez Perce since it's already existing, and they add in. I'm kind of tossing between bobcat and coyote, but we're going to say bobcat. That's our guess. They're going to add the bobcat to Nez Perce in the snow. Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do, but that's my guess. So that's the last of the big update there. So they did add in more screenshots that people have shared, some antics in the UTVs or whatever. And then they close out by thanking everyone for being part of the hunting community, and of course talk about sharing information with them and all that good stuff. So when we started up here earlier, we were talking about the new residents in Tikamoon Plains. So if we take into consideration that now we know it's not a full team, it's a smaller group They are dedicated to Way of the Hunter, but it's a smaller group now working on Way of the Hunter. Knowing that, that makes me even more hesitant to believe that it would be an elephant. And that's part of what's kind of fueled that thought process from the beginning, is the fact that it is a smaller team. Um, I just can't see it. I think it's going to be something in the, well, I'm going to call it the deer species, antelope species, whatever. Something with 4 legs and horns. But I think we're more likely to see something that's more common like that. Something that's simple to do, something that's familiar. Of course, there's still a ton of work to do with a new animal. There's a lot less work going into, say, creating a new, and I'm using deer very loosely, but into creating a new deer than there is in creating an elephant or a giraffe or anything like that. So that's what's kind of fueling my thoughts on it being, just another something simple. But that's it. So yeah, it's a lot of news in a small section. It's a lot of news for them to admit that the team's broken up, and it's a lot of news to admit that they're building a new map that it's going to be free. So, that's cool. Anyway, that's about it. Again, there really wasn't a whole lot to this. I just wanted to kind of go through everything, share some thoughts on what I think we're likely to see, and make sure that if you weren't in Discord or following all their socials, that you had a chance to see that there's some changes coming. All right, guys. So with that, we're going to wrap things up, and I'm going to go try to work on the Ranger Chronicles a little more. I've got some work to do. Got a couple of exciting hunts coming up, so we'll see how that goes. All right, guys. Y'all have a good night. God bless, and happy hunting.